the corner. A lot of things happening. Lloyd has been going to practice. Did not go today, but was there Friday. Saw the special teams, which seemed to be a debacle. Work in progress.
Not so special.
Listen, trying to figure it out, right?
Hey, the returner's got everything.
Don't get up in arms.
Right. We'll figure it out, right? Get in a rhythm with the punter,
Up in feet.
Figure something out. Maybe we'll get someone from the soccer team if they have to. Who knows?
Got to catch it with your chest.
Got a lot of guys performing really well. I think there's a lot of conversation about undue, criticism. This is the time where you're supposed to work out the kinks. You're supposed to get the timing. You're supposed to get the chemistry with your wide receivers. So I wouldn't look too much into Nuss throwing a couple interceptions here or there. It's more about getting that continuity with the receiving core. On the other side, though, I would look at the cornerbacks and say, man, they look good because they are playing well. Ashton Stamps has been the highlight, I think, of the secondary so far early in this camp. We'll talk about that. I said Lloyd has been there on the boots on the ground a couple times. We have not been there at all. So we'll see his expert opinion on what he sees.
I did get caught in the huddle. Nobody noticed me. I was just mixing up with the boys.
No, you weren't.
Yeah, Michael Waddett just missed me.
You're in the huddle?
Oh, yeah. I was about the pylon. They just all came over here. They're working on one-on-ones. And I was like, oh.
By yourself?
Yeah.
Why were you standing by yourself?
I mean, like,
well, at that point, you're like, I'm in here.
I'm in here. I just need to grab a water bottle. I can stay forever.
You should have started putting water. You should have gotten water.
Couple squeezes.
But why had you wandered off by yourself? That's what I.
Because I watch different, Coach. I'm trying to get that all 22.
Well, listen, I'm glad for our sake. I'm glad that you wandered off and you got a little bit of insight into there. Another name that has been popping up as a topic of conversation throughout the course of football practice is John Emery. All right, John Emery transferred, did not transfer, has been back here, has been a tumultuous career. Decorated, in a sense, if you think about all the things that he has gone through. Was the top running back in the country one of the top running backs in the country coming out. I think the top running back in Louisiana. I don't know if he was the top in the country. Was he?
Mm-hmm.
The top running back in the country. And had some moments, had some injury issues, had some academic issues at one point. But he is back coming off the
unfounded.
20s. Yeah, I think that was a little dumb. But he's here. He's back, fifth-year senior, coming off ACL surgery, 8 months. He is competing. I don't want to say competing for the starting role, but he's competing for an actual important role in the backfield. And Brian Kelly is trying to figure out how healthy are you? Are you going to be ready to go opening day? And I think he had a little bit of a setback today. Had to come off the field, knees a little sore. Obviously, 8 months off of ACL surgery. You're putting a lot of impact. You're putting a lot of intensity on the knee, a lot of wear and tear, a lot of moving and cutting. So I do not fault the coaching staff for trying to do that, and I don't fault John Emery for saying, hey, put me in there, because they've got to figure it out, right? They got to figure out if he's going to be ready, because if he's not ready, Trey Holly still up in the air, right? You have Josh Williams as a starter, not John Williams. Josh Williams as a starter. And then you have Caleb Jackson, who's probably going to get starter type of work, right? And then you have Caden Durham, who's a really talented player, but a freshman. So that's really the three guys that you know right now, if the season started tomorrow, you can count on. So having another veteran presence in John Emery, I think would be a welcomed sight for the coaching staff. But we'll see how he recovers and if he can kind of get going. And the last thing that I'll do, I think that's really it, actually. That's all we got for the Heineken headlines.
Quick report.
Love reports.
From our guy, Lon Sullivan.
Yeah, great.
Who does some boots-on-the-ground reporting.
Boots on the ground.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
This has not been confirmed nor denied, but this is what he is reporting per Twitter. Preston
He's pretty
Hickey,
good.
He's plugged in, but I don't want to. I haven't done any. Yeah, this is the only place I've seen it, so I don't want to put him under the bus or anything.
But you just did.
Yeah, I'm just saying that he tweeted it, so it's his report.
Okay.
I'm giving him credit.
Good point.
LSU defensive tackle Preston Hickey no longer with the team. Strongest player on the team, allegedly.
Okay. Just no reason.
That's all it says.
Okay.
I don't subscribe.
I would imagine that's probably true. Defensive tackle, right? Defensive lineman.
Defensive tackle.
Huh?
Tackle.
That's what I said.
Yeah. Thin, maybe ish.
Thinnish spot, right? But there's been a couple guys that have stood out in that position so far. The main one being, the freshman from
Evangel.
stud. You'd imagine he's going to be right in the mix early on as a freshman. And the other one, and you brought up before the show, is who?
Pius. Yeah, dude. I mean, the more and more we're getting to hear about him out of camp right now, when we're talking about this LSU defense and this LSU team, the more and more it seems like there is definitely some able and willing players, and you're gonna see a lot more spirited play, if you will, and honestly some togetherness. I think this team is being largely underrated as to what they got right now, and I actually like the idea. I just kind of want to flip it back to the other side. When you talk about Nussmeier and what he's doing right now and the picks he may be throwing and maybe seemingly from the outside looking at you, maybe thinking, oh, he's a little careless and he's doing a little too much right now. Listen, I think that conversation has probably been a huge conversation with him and the coaching staff and the quarterback coach over the past 2 years, right? And it's obviously still a conversation right now in camp. And I like the idea with outside of Kyron Lacey, with really a brand new receiving core, of him trying to figure out, trying to see what can I fit and what can't I fit. Because the last thing I want you to do is not have an idea, not really want to be able to let it rip once we get to game one, once they get to Vegas and they play USC, and you basically play scared, as opposed to you figuring out what can go and now understanding how to dial it back and still be risky and still put balls in where they need to be. So I like what I've seen from them so far early in camp, and this does seem to be a team, to me, trending in the right direction and kind of all fronts, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by what you see come the start of the year.
Agreed. I'm okay with the interceptions right now. And it's not like he's
for
throwing,
someone like him.
Yeah, and it's not like he's throwing like 7 in practice. He's throwing a few, and you've got to figure out with your receivers, because you're a receiver, right? You played college football with the really good quarterbacks, and this is the time where you figure out, all right, this is how me and my receiver go on the same page.
You got to understand how this thing works, right? Like, if we're in camp right now, and as you go through and you progress through camp, and as you progress through the season, the more and more you have receivers running routes, and they're coming out of cuts, and they're feeling like they're open, but the ball's not being thrown, and the ball is being held. The next thing you know, you see the quarterback scrambling, and they're blowing the whistle, so you don't get guys used to seeing the ball come out. You don't get guys used to catching the ball. The more and more you get them to come out of those routes and those breaks and those cuts slower and slower and slower. Why? Because you're no longer thinking and anticipating that the ball is going to be coming. So you have to have a feeling of, let's get on the same page, but let me push the ball. Let me find these spots, because I need to know where I can and where I can't, and who's open, who's not, who's coming out of these right, what speed you're coming out of these. That way when we get to games, there's no figuring it out. There's no hesitation on, I don't know, drop it down, because then at that point, you're trying to preserve turning over the ball and doing all that. So this is, I don't mind it at all, and you keep guys spirited, right? You keep receivers running routes hard because they keep seeing the ball coming out. Whether or not they're getting it on that route, they're knowing that, hey, I'm running these routes, I'm coming out of breaks, ball's gone already. Or I'm coming out of breaks and he's throwing it here already. As opposed to you coming out of breaks and ball's not going, and now we're doing a scramble drill, and now it's not the same thing anymore. Right. You no longer have guys doing that. So I'm very okay with it.
If he's making these throws with conviction, and he may be throwing a couple interceptions here or there, but it's coming out on time, in rhythm, and like you said, at any given moment you can get the ball. I think that's important. It's also important to understand, all right, what receivers can I throw it at? Who can I go back shoulder? Who can go up and get the ball? Who can make contested catches? Who's going to be able to – because at the end of the day, when you're playing the SEC, you ain't going to have guys wide open all the time. You're going to have to make tight window throws. You're going to have to make throws of receivers that maybe aren't open. You're going to have to throw them open. You're going to have – that's all chemistry. That's all receiver knowing, okay, in this look, when I come out of a cut, if this guy's on my top shoulder, I'm going to get the ball here. Or if this guy's trailing me or ahead of me, I'm going to get the ball here, right? This happens all now. This is where it starts to be built. So I'm not putting too much stock into, all right, he's throwing made a couple turnovers, had a couple turnovers, made a couple bad throws, maybe made some bad reads. I'm not putting too much stock into it. What do you think?
No, and I just think I don't want to say it's an easy narrative, but it's the one that I think that they probably want to avoid with Nussmeier, considering his past, where people are like gunslinger. It's like, yeah, they're using, like y'all said, they're using these opportunities and these drills to take chances and see if I can fit it in these windows, because give people a chance to make a play. Like, from whatever I was there and I saw them go 11-on-11, he was very measured and calculated with the decisions he was making. Like, there was times where Major Burns, like, busted up into a screen and he threw it into the dirt. There was an out route that he tried to hit, or a bubble screen, I think. He threw it away. Like, those types of things are like, those important. Are the plays you want to avoid, where you're like, this is going to be a net loss anyway. But for him in one-on-ones and trying to, like, let's see if you can back shoulder
that's
this ball.
the other thing. Like, the one-on-ones thing, like, if he's throwing these interceptions in 11-on-11 when he's making
and you're getting
bad
totally
reads,
fooled,
yeah, that's one thing. But if you're doing it in, like, passing situations where, like, hey, okay, it's one-on-one, receivers are going up against the cornerbacks, and in those situations, like, cornerbacks are going to win sometimes. Like, it's like when you're playing in a fall scrimmage before the season starts, and you're facing the same pitchers over and over and over again. Like, I guarantee you Paul Skeens gave up more hits against his team in the fall or leading up into the season than the season started, because you see them over and over and over again. You're really familiar with it, and so that's going to happen, right? But those are also the times where you figure out, okay, what receiver can I throw back shoulders to? Who's going to go up and get it? Who's going to compete? And on the other side of it, maybe these guys like Ashton Stamps are just dominating and playing really well, which would be a welcomed thing for our defense, because now you have a shutdown cornerback who's actually doing what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so when I think about Nussmeier too, like, because of his background, because of his upbringing, he does not strike me as a guy who just gets fooled all day reading defenses and can't read defenses and can't do that thing, right? And we kind of got a little prequel to that last year when he came in and played in the bowl game, and he threw well, 300-plus yards, wins a ball game in that game. So that doesn't really bother me when I think about him. So even if it was 11-on-11 and he was throwing picks right now, I'm okay, because I want him to get used to letting it rip. I want him to be comfortable with that. I want his receivers to understand he's going to throw it, keep working, and get open. Because I believe, with knowing who he is as a player and kind of how they've tabbed him, that they believe that he's going to make the right reads. It's, can we hone him in from making the bad decisions? Not so much the reads, because you got to remember, he's got a huge arm, and he likes his arm. And he should like his arm, because it's damn good, thing. Right? So now it's not, is he going to make the right read or is he not? Is he going to not try to put too much on his physical ability and understand that you can always win the play, dumping it down and going on to the next progression or moving around? Yeah. And I think that's the progression that comes through camp. And that's also the work and the synergy that comes with a group of receivers that they truly haven't worked in those environments yet before.
Yeah, and look, the quarterback position is going to be the most critiqued position in any school, specifically LSU, because it used to be, okay, we had never had a quarterback, and now it's been like, oh, no, okay, now we're really good at the quarterback thing.
I'll tell you, too, there's another thing that kind of happens, too, when it comes to camp and practice, where – so take somebody like Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels always has what to lean on in his game, his lower half, correct? Meaning, like, if it ain't there, I can always tuck that thing and run it, right? I can always move and make things happen lower half. Now, I'm not saying that Nuss can't do it, because that's not what we're talking about here. But Nuss is a player that knows he is more of a pocket passer than he is a runner. So in those cases, when you have camp days and you know you're not about to get hit and you know you need to stand in there and make a throw, those guys tend to stand in there trying to figure out a way to, quote-unquote, force or make a throw happen, because they know that's what I lean on in my game, as opposed to the other side. Those guys tend to tuck that thing and make a move, because they know that that's part of their game.
Right.
So when it comes to these situations, like, I'm okay with him trying to find ways to make the throws work, because you can always bring that thing back.
Right.
I can't, if you're not willing to do it now, you got to imagine there's no way you're going to be willing to fit it in on 3rd and 6.
Right.
And then are you running for it? Probably not.
Right.
I'm not saying he can't run, but I'm just saying probably not. That's not something that we're going to look on at the end of the year and say, boy, Nuss really, he ran for 500, 600 yards and he moved. That's not, if that's where it is, I would be very, very shocked.
Yeah.
That's not where it's going to be. So, like, you got to think of it in that way, too.
No, 100% agree, right? And, like, this is, like I said, it's 4th practice in.
And
right?
I think there's a world also where they're telling him probably, like, test these defensive backs. Let's see what we have here. Like, you don't want to have a practice where you're not, because what's the biggest question mark probably coming into the LSU football season? I don't think there's a lot of people worried about what Nuss is bringing to the table.
Right.
I think it's like, let's see what we have in Stamps. Let's see what we have in these young guys like Bernard Causey. Like, let's see what these guys can play.
That's a great point, right? Because Nuss has a great grasp on the offense, right? On the scheme. He's been in it. He's been around it. He understands it. He showed you he understands it. when he had the opportunity to start in the bowl game, right? So that is he's going to get that. Now it's a matter, okay, how do you build this chemistry? How do you find out what else we have and what type of players that we have? You find that out by saying, okay, we're going to go out there and we're going to challenge them, just like you said, right? If you compare it to other sports, right? Baseball, guys on the mound, he's pitching and he's in the fall and he's getting ready, or he's in spring training, he's getting ready for the season. That's when you're trying to figure out, okay, let me kind of tweak this pitch. Let me try to work on this. I want to learn how to throw a cutter. This is where you throw a cutter. Okay, I'm going to throw it. I may get hit for 4 starts in a row in spring training, but the only way I'm going to figure out I'm going to develop it is by actually doing it in a situation where the stats don't really count, and you kind of hone in on your skills. So I kind of compare it to that. I'm not worried about it. I think what a lot of people are starting to worry about is the little bit of the running back position, right? Because you thought last year we had too many. We had 7 running backs, I feel like, on the roster, and guys who were all capable. You had a couple of those guys leave.
Trey Bradford's out there somewhere.
Trey Bradford, I don't know where he went. You have Logan Diggs went to Ole Miss. Noah Kane, he's gone. Is he retired? He graduated or retired? He graduated, or did he transfer somewhere? He was there, but he's not there. So you had 4 running backs on the roster, and that's
He's a Bengal.
Oh, he's in the NFL. There you go. So you have Josh Williams, right? You have Caleb Jackson, who looks like a monster right now.
Monstar.
You have Caden Durham, who is very highly touted, and people are excited to watch him. And you have John Emery. Those are the 4 guys that you have right now on the roster that are active. Trey Holly, up in the air. Don't know what's going to happen with him. Well, John Emery's hurt, coming off injury, and kind of came off the field today a little limpy, right? Not happy about his knee not being 100%. Season's 3 weeks away. How do you feel about our running back situation right now?
We were kind of saying this before the show, where we were going through, like, LSU, we went back to, I guess, Leonard Fournette is when they've had, like, one stable running back.
The last time.
Yeah, the last time that they've had a guy where you were like, this is your bookend tailback, whatever you want to put it. Guys, too.
That was right after.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You had 2 years, and I would even say guys kind of bled into, like, Leonard's junior year because he was hurt.
Yeah.
But LSU, especially in my mind, like under Frank Wilson, has always had a stable of backs, and I think that's why they're pushing Emery so hard, because you look at that running back room, and you know what you're getting out of Josh Williams. You hope you know what you're getting out of Caleb Jackson, who comes in looking like an absolute freak show, and then you're looking for that third guy just to be able to spell the running back room a little bit, because when your offensive line is as good as LSU's is, you want to be able to take the ball out of Nuss's hands sometimes to where you can wear teams down and run the ball. And as much as they want to be able to do it, you probably need a third guy. Yeah. And I think that's why they're testing Emery so early on. He's not, I don't want to, not trying to correct you, but he didn't come off injured. He's just frustrated with the amount of maybe grind that he's going through to be able to get there. But I think he wants that.
Yeah, he probably doesn't feel great.
Play. Yeah.
It's aggravating that he knows he's trying to do things that he's used to doing and can't do, which is normal when you're coming off injury. I think, you saw Caden Durham get a lot more run today.
He's going to play a lot
than he has in the last week. I think that is because John Emery's not quite there yet.
We've pushed
so
him.
we're gonna have to get. He's gonna have to get ready.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, you want a running back room to be a little deeper than 2 deep, just for the sake of actually being able to have depth there, just in case something happens. To me, and I don't really want to shift the convo, but to me, what I really think about this team, and when I really think about where will this offense go and how can this offense take off, if you got somebody like Chris Hilton who's able to come into his own and really play some X and probably some Y, which means they can move him down into the slot a little bit and do some of this stuff, and if he's able to do that from those 2 spots, I think you're able to actually bring in C.J. Daniels or another third into this thing where you're able to play that speed and be able to take off the top, and he's able to run these different routes. That's when I think this offense will be in a really, really, really good spot, and that's what I'm looking for. Someone like Kyron Lacy who knows this thing well, who's played a lot of it, who's had to come in and kind of get in where he fit in the past, and he's going to I don't think he's just going to stick on the outside, but he's going to get the majority of that work probably at the Z and the strong side, right? Yeah. So if I'm able to take a Chris Hilton and play him on the weak side, be able to run him and do what you want to do with him, play him at the Y and kind of move him down in the slot and throw a C.J. Daniels in there as well and motion him over and do all these kind of things. If those guys can start playing the game in between the ears well, that's when this team is really going to do what they can really do. And that's when you see this offense really open up. And I really do think guys like that is where this offense lies and how prepared they are and how ready they are to start this year.
And you've spoken about this before, where it's like if you don't know every position as a wide receiver, wherever you line up, like you're probably not going to play as much as if you just learn one. And today, I know, like from what I've read by other reports, I didn't go. They were moving people around today. Like it wasn't just Kyron Lacy on the outside. Like They moved him into the slot. They put C.J. Daniels in the slot. Like they're trying to make sure everybody knows each position. And I think that bodes well for what LSU is trying to do, because if you can be that multidimensional and you start lining up where everybody's not. You just don't walk up on the outside.
And honestly, look, that's what you should be doing. But I guess what I mean to this thing, too, is you got to understand, like, there's a difference of us trying it and doing it in practice. And then we know that we call the play, you get to the line, you do whatever the shift is and or the motion, you line up the correct way, and you're able to play fast. Mm-hmm. Meaning you're not thinking through steps, you're not counting steps, you're not trying to figure out where's the safeties and who's here, and you understand what you're supposed to do. You're able to play fast from those positions. That's where it becomes completely different.
Yeah.
That's where it opens up, because now you're just on instincts now. And that's where, if we can really get the C.J. Daniels, who's new in the offense, the
Chris
Hilton, who's going to probably be a new starter this year. If you're able to get some Aaron Anderson in there as well, maybe some Kyle Parker. If you're able to get any mix of those two after Kyron Lacy to really step up and be able to play fast,
right?
That's where.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say. I think that you're gonna look up midway through the season and say, now they're unproven right now, but I think you can look up midway through the season like, damn, our receiving core is like super deep, right? Because if you're they're putting these guys in there. You have 3 guys right now that you can say, all right, based off of your experience and based off of what you've done over the last few years, you're your starter. Kyron Lacy, obviously the number 1. C.J. Daniels coming in here with a lot of hype. Coming here with a lot of numbers they put up at Liberty. He's going to be probably in that top 3. And you're going to have Chris Hilton as the 3rd, right? In whatever order, wherever they're playing on the field. But then you have guys like Aaron Anderson, obviously super recruit, transferred in. He's been getting some time. Kyle Parker getting some time. And you got the freshman in how do you pronounce his last name? Billiot? Bio? I don't know how to say it.
Billiot, right?
Yeah. Billiot? Kylan, whatever, that guy.
Or Billio.
He is a freshman. And then you got Watkins also going out there and doing some things and kind of open up some eyes. So my point is these guys are getting some run early on in camp, which means they've impressed up to this point. And so now it's a matter, okay, who can continue to progress and move forward and separate themselves? I think you're going to be able to look up. And I've been high on Kyle Parker for a year. Right, I think that the reports that I've gotten on him as a guy, like a work ethic guy, as a talented guy out there, and like he just keeps he's kind of under the radar, but his name's always popped up, right? No, they're not hyping him up, but his name's always in this conversation. And to me, that means, okay, this guy's doing his work and he's doing everything super consistent. Maybe he hasn't had a day where he's like, damn, he's caught 3 touchdowns over the corner, beating the secondary deep for 3 touchdowns, but consistent, dependable, and to me, that over time is what you want.
And there's like you said, unproven guys, but there's a bunch of those guys in the mix, whether it be Kylan Billiot or Shelton Sampson, who showed up early, like whenever like the media was allowed there, he had 2 huge catches. And then
coming off a banged head.
Yeah, he's precautionary.
Yep.
And then you see Jelani Watkins, the track guy, that is an absolute burner, that they're trying to get him in the mix too. And I think Billiot's probably been the guy that's played the most.
That's not even talking about Savion Thomas, who's who's hurt right now. Or not, I don't know if he's hurt, but he hasn't.
No, whenever we showed up on Friday, he was getting taped up and stretched out, and it was just like a camp thing where you're like going through the grind already. So I don't think it's detrimental, but he was like, it's time to probably ease him back a little bit.
And now, mind you, like all the guys that you're mentioning, I actually expect to see a dosage of them all as well. But to me, in my mind, when I mentioned the 2 or 3 that I mentioned, is I would imagine that those are the guys that are getting the absolute most reps, and those are the guys that they're going to count on to actually know and lead these other spots in those rooms, which means they're going to get the most reps in the games as well. So these other guys are going to mix in until that mixing proves to be, hey, no, you need to take over the spot, right? But those other guys are going to get the first burn. They're going to get the first opportunity. And if they can get it going from the start, that's when I feel like this offense will be better and it'll be better for the long stand if those guys are actually able to do it.
Yeah, in my mind, and I don't think it's a stretch to go, it's Lacey, Hilton, and C.J. Daniels. That's your three.
That's your top three right now.
And you're seeing, obviously, Mason Taylor will be your primary tight end.
Yards.
Sprinkle in some Trey Green, who has looked phenomenal.
Listen, Trey Green is going. You're going to see a lot of him, and you're going to see who is this alien.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a big body. He's such a big body. I can tell you right now, he is a red zone target. There will be some packages where inside the 20s, he is going to be a part of the game, and he should be because he is a body. He's going to box you out, and if you put him and Mason on the field, that's a problem, dude. That's a problem in that personnel because it is forever hard in football to find safeties or linebackers that can run with or that can play with that kind of size. And if you got two of them on the field at the same time, it makes sense.